Well, good morning and welcome. Excuse me. Welcome to Zen Fits here in Blackstone, Virginia, the center of the world. But let's say the zero of the world. The title of this talk is "The Cosmos is Some Zero," and that means everything adds up to zero. Now let's meditate on that. Let's take a peek into this, because we're really getting into a real Zen fit here. Now, imagine when you have zero, that's the OK sign, by the way. These are the two opposites. In fact, this means this is a signal for Om. Here's that zero. This is a symbol for sex. And in yoga, we have these the zero, and then you have the three gunas, they're called, or three forces would be the positive and negative and neutral, and zero. So this zero is very interesting. I think the Indians invented it. It changed the way we do numbers. Who thought up of zero? How can you think up of nothing? So this took the Indian mind, this metaphysical mind, which is both metaphysics and imagination, the beautiful ancient Indian mind that was the first to imagine zero. Now, if you look at zero, go this way, I don't know which way, but one way is positive to infinitive, the other way is negative to infinity. Positive and negative goes on to infinity, there's no end to it. But zero is the source. So out of zero comes positive and negative. And then if you add zero, I'm just riffing with this now. So if you take every 10 numbers, like 1 to the 4th 10, add a zero, what happens? Well, you start over. Now you got 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 20, add a zero. And I'm not a mathematician, I'm just looking at what this number does, is that it keeps creating a new source. So everywhere you go is zero. But what we can't see, this is emptiness in Zen, the zero. In fact, the sign of Zen is a zero. It's a calligraphy. Whoop. It's a zero. And Taoism, of course, is the yin-yang sign. But there you see the two opposites, and Zen goes one step further than the Taoism. It added the zero, the emptiness, you see. So let's explore this for a minute. What does it mean if you are zero? Well, the universe is in balance. If it weren't, it would explode. Take a nuclear reactor. If it gets out of balance, what happens to it? It becomes a bomb. Okay? So it has to be controlled so that the exploding forces within the nuclear explosion, a nuclear reactor, is a controlled nuclear bomb. It's zero. It balances the opposites. It balances this with that. What is a hurricane? But a balance of forces wins around what? Zero. The eye of the hurricane is zero. So you really can't escape this zero, but you can't find it because it's nothing. It's empty. So it's everywhere. Everywhere is zero trying to create zero. So we get into the problem with our consciousness because we like to think of the world, we have to think of the world with our language. Our language is thinking. And so our language is particularly the Indo-European language. Not all languages are like this, but the Indo-European language set is based on subject, verb, object. Subject is a noun. Verb is doing something to an object. So a noun does something to objects. And so we think that's what that's the reality map. This space in the middle here is the verb. You can't see a verb. You just see objects moving. You don't see the wind. You see what the wind moves. So we see nouns. We perceive nouns. We think of nouns. Everything's a noun. If we see something, we have to label it. What is that? Well, we're going to give it a noun. We'll make it a new noun. Fill up a dictionary with nouns. What is it? It's a noun, you see. You can't see the verbs. But the verb is the zero. So you take a wave, get into a sine wave, right? Like that, right? The snake, the goddess, the wave. You got the crest, you got the valley. You can't separate them. It's movement. A wave is movement. But you see, so how does it move? Well, it's opposites. It's in balance. There's the crest. If you have a crest, you're going to have an equal valley, you see. Whatever you do this way, you're going to create this way. Go higher, you get it lower, you see. So if you want to escape the valley, well, obviously, in our kind of thinking, the valley is a noun. The crest is a noun. The valley is negative. I want to get away from the negative numbers, so I'm going to create a positive number. So I create a positive number, and a negative number follows it. A valley follows it, right? Wait a minute. I feel the pain of that negative. Let's create a bigger positive. So I create a bigger wave, and a bigger negative follows. So off we go, until we get to a point where the wave cannot stand the distance between the crest and the valley. It's gotten so far apart that the energy can't hold it together. So what happens then? Snap. The rubber band comes back to zero. Back to zero. So whatever you're trying to escape, so this is life. Life is zero, but we try to escape it because we don't want to be a zero. We want to be a noun. I got to be a noun. I got to be something. Got to have some qualities. Be a negative or a positive, I don't care. I just want to be a noun. I want to be something, because if I'm not a noun, I don't exist. And I got to exist, so I only can exist as something. But that something always has an opposite. I want to be 5 positive numbers. Well, then I'm going to have 5 negative numbers as my shadow. So I never feel completely positive, because I've always got the same amount of negative, you see. This is the zero. Now I've got here, and I got this. So what do I do with this? Well, there's several things to do with this to get rid of the negative. If I want to be positive, is I can project it out there and say, oh, Obama's a negative or Trump's a negative, or whatever, the world, or somebody is doing something to make me feel out of balance. What is making me feel not zero or balanced, you see? Well, it's some other. But it's really the other half of my sine wave that I've projected out there. Or I may repress it. Oh, it doesn't exist. You see, but it still is there, except it's under the table of my consciousness. There's a gap here, you see. Now the negative, you see, now the positive and the negative has a gap, and I put it under the table. I don't see it. It's gone. I repressed it. But it's still there, you see, creating the fear and the dread up here. The jaws. Something is following me. Something is chasing me. Some premonition of evil. It's because of the gap, you see. Now, I don't want to close the gap, because then what will happen? The whole thing will collapse to zero. Now, that is Zen. Zen is the practice of collapsing the sine wave to zero. And that zero is seeing. I see. Clarity. Spacious seeing. No impediments. No boundaries to seeing, you see. Zero. And that zero now is everywhere. As I move along, that used to be the definition of God. The center of a circle that has no circumference. The point is everywhere. So zero is everywhere. You are everywhere. But our perception, our oscillating conscious mind, is always seeing, this is what it does, it sees in terms of forms. And it sees in terms of nouns, you see. So everything's a thing. And I try to juggle and get all these things in balance, you see, by weighing. Well, I got 5 nouns here, and they equal 10 pounds. So in other words, that's poor. But anyway, we're always trying to find balance by measuring. When the truth is, everything is already in balance, and our measuring, our seeking, our calculating, our adding just keeps creating the imbalance that we're chasing the zero. We're always chasing the zero. We're always chasing ourselves. Once in a while, we will get a zero moment when we feel in balance. And at those moments are very precious and very real because everything is okay. There was a moment when I and the world was okay. But it was just briefly, because then I had a wobble and I had to fix it. So find those moments of okayness and you'll find the zero. Thanks for dropping in.